This podcast is supported by The RealReal. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The RealReal.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The RealReal? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 38 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The RealReal than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The RealReal. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 site credit when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
Buying a car in Carvana was so easy. I was able to finance it through them.
Whoa, wait, you mean finance?
Yeah, finance. Got pre-qualified for a Carvana auto loan, entered my terms, and shot from thousands of great car options all within my budget.
That's cool, but financing through Carvana was so easy.
Financed. Done. And I get to pick up my car from their Carvana vending machine tomorrow.
Financed.
Right, that's what I said.
You can spend time trying to pronounce financing, or you can actually finance and buy your car today on
Carvana.
Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
This podcast is supported by The RealReal. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The RealReal.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The RealReal? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 38 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The RealReal than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The RealReal. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 site credit when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
On September 5th, 1982, a 12-year-old vanished while delivering newspapers in West Des Moines, Iowa. That morning, he left home alone with his dog, deviating from his usual routine of going with his father. Witnesses saw him speaking with a suspicious man in a blue car, and shortly after, his red wagon filled with undelivered papers was found abandoned. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of the boy was found. His parents believed he was abducted by a child pornography ring and pursued every lead, including psychics, prison informants, and even a late-night phone call believed to be from their missing son. Despite decades of effort, his disappearance remains unsolved. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalyn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Johnny's story. Johnny Gosch was born on November 12, 1969 in Des Moines, Iowa. He was the youngest of 3 children to Noreen and John Gosch. He was a polite and friendly boy, attending the 7th grade at Indian Hills Junior High School. He was popular with his classmates and got along well with everyone he met. He was a member of the school's football team and also took karate lessons. On Sunday, September 5th, 1982, Johnny got up early and left his home to be in his paper route. Normally, his father would accompany him on this route, but on this day, Johnny went alone. Johnny also insisted he was old enough to complete his newspaper route alone, but his father usually went along on his Sunday route because the newspapers were heavier. Every Sunday, Johnny followed the same routine. He would get up early, get dressed, and wake his father up. The two of them would then walk the 2 blocks from their home to the newspaper drop-off site, where Johnny would load his bundles of papers into his red wagon. Around 5:45 a.m., Johnny quietly slipped out of the house, taking only his dog Gretchen for company. Johnny, towing the red wagon he used to carry his newspapers, made his way toward the Des Moines Register drop-off site to pick up the papers he needed for the 37 customers on his route. At some point on the short walk, he met up with a 15-year-old friend who also delivered the newspapers. The two boys picked up their newspapers together and then headed off in separate directions to complete their routes. Johnny's parents, John and Noreen, had no idea that Johnny had left the house without waking his father up. They woke up with a start when the phone rang around 7:30 a.m. It was one of Johnny's customers calling to ask why his newspaper hadn't been delivered. Johnny had been working the same route for the past year and had never failed to make sure his newspapers were delivered on time. John apologized to the man and said he thought his son had overslept. He went into Johnny's room to wake him up and was surprised to find that he wasn't in bed. Confused, John got dressed and headed outside. He started walking in the direction of the Des Moines Register office. He had gone less than 2 blocks when he found Johnny's red wagon. There were 37 newspapers inside, indicating that Johnny hadn't made any of his deliveries that morning. Unsure of what was going on, John quickly completed Johnny's paper route for him, then went back to the house. As soon as he told Noreen what was going on, she called the police and reported Johnny missing. Johnny's 15-year-old friend told detectives that he and Johnny had picked up their newspapers at the same time that morning. He noted that while they were walking to the register's office, a man in a dark blue car drove by them 3 times, stopping twice to ask for directions to 86th Street. When Johnny and his friends split up after picking up their papers, the 15-year-old saw that Johnny had stopped a couple of blocks from the office and was talking to a man wearing a baseball cap. He couldn't tell if it was the same man that had asked for directions earlier. The 15-year-old watched Johnny for a few seconds and noted that he didn't seem to be nervous or upset. Gretchen, the dog, who would usually bark if she felt threatened, was standing quietly by Johnny's side. Figuring that Johnny knew the person, the 15-year-old turned away and went about delivering his newspapers. He didn't see Johnny or the man again. When John and Noreen woke up later that morning, Gretchen was back at the house. It was unclear when she had returned, but there was nothing to indicate that Johnny had returned with her. Police assumed Gretchen headed home alone after Johnny went missing. Johnny wasn't the type of kid anyone expected to run away from home. Lou Cook, the district circulation manager for the Des Moines Register, told police that Johnny had always been a reliable employee and had always been a responsible child. Friends said there was no way Johnny would have willingly gone anywhere before he completed his paper route. The delivery boys were charged 75 cents for each paper they didn't deliver. Johnny hadn't delivered any of his newspapers on his route before he vanished, meaning he would have to pay the company $27.75. His boss told police that Johnny had never owed money before because he was meticulous about making sure he went to each home on his route. He believed the 12-year-old had been kidnapped. Noreen pointed out that Johnny had left all of his belongings and money at home. He had recently used some of the money he saved from his newspaper route to buy himself a motorbike and a new pair of Adidas sneakers. If he planned on running away from home, he would have taken these items with him. Several other paper boys, all witnesses to the abduction, said Johnny was approached by a man driving a blue Ford Fairmont. The driver shut off the engine, opened the passenger door, and swung his feet out on the curb right where the boys were assembling their newspapers. He started asking where 86th Street was. Johnny turned to another paperboy and said, "I've got my papers loaded in the wagon. I'm scared. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to head home." As Johnny left, the driver of the car took off too. The man pulled the door shut, started up the engine, but before he left, he reached up and flicked the dome light 3 times. His mother believes the driver was signaling another person who later grabbed Johnny. Police immediately began scouring the area, but hit one dead end after another. Authorities did door-to-door canvassing within the neighborhood, trying to find someone who saw something. Police were soon joined by dozens of neighbors and family friends, all of them hoping that Johnny would show up with a good explanation for where he had been. While searchers combed through the streets of the quiet neighborhood, detectives started looking for witnesses who might have seen Johnny after he left his home that morning. Investigators stopped drivers and questioned joggers, hoping that someone saw something. But unfortunately, not many people had been out at that early of a time. The search for Johnny continued throughout the day, but no clues to his whereabouts were found. By Monday morning, word had spread about the missing boy, and more than 1,000 people abandoned their Labor Day plans to join the search effort. They scoured the city, searching for any sign of Johnny or his newspaper bag, which wasn't found with his wagon and newspapers. While some volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through fields and abandoned lots, Others drove through Dallas, Warren, and Polk counties, carefully checking in ditches alongside rural roads and highways. As hours went by without any sign of Johnny or his yellow newspaper bag, the searchers struggled to remain optimistic. The search for Johnny was halted late Monday night, and West Des Moines police chief admitted that the lack of clues was discouraging, but there was nothing to make them believe that Johnny wasn't alive. Police wanted to speak with the driver of the dark blue car seen in the area around the time that Johnny went missing. They made several appeals for the driver to contact detectives since they were seen in the vicinity, while being sure to clarify the driver was not considered a suspect. Tuesday's search concentrated on the Raccoon River, Walnut Wood State Park, and the Browns Woods area. Volunteers on foot and horseback scoured the heavily wooded area for hours, but didn't find any clues to Johnny's whereabouts. Investigators had no concrete evidence pointing to foul play. No one heard any yelling or any kind of struggle around the time Johnny vanished, but it seemed unlikely that the 12-year-old had taken off on his own. With few leads to go on, the West Des Moines Police Department enlisted the help of Greta Alexander, a psychic who had assisted various law enforcement agencies in the past. Greta told investigators that she believed Johnny was alive, but was being held somewhere against his will, although she was unable to provide any information about who had taken the boy or where he was being held. Still, her words were well received by Johnny's parents, who were desperate for some sign that their son was alive. On Wednesday, members of the Iowa State Police used an airplane to conduct an aerial search of West Des Moines and the surrounding area. They also asked residents in rural areas of the county to walk their properties and check their sheds, barns, and garages for any potential clues. By the end of the week, investigators received dozens of tips, but none of them brought them any closer to finding Johnny. Detectives interviewed Johnny's family members, friends, classmates, and teachers, hoping to gain some insight into his state of mind at the time of his disappearance. Everyone told them the same thing. Johnny was a pleasant boy who got along well with his parents and siblings and never talked about wanting to run away from home. He loved his paper route and had been delivering the same route for about a year. There was no way he could have gotten lost in the neighborhood he knew so well. Everyone believed he had been abducted. As the investigation entered its second week, the physical search for Johnny was called off. Detectives turned their focus toward trying to identify the two cars seen in the area around the time Johnny went missing. They were combing through vehicle registration records, but since they only had vague descriptions to go on, it was a tedious task. As days passed without any sign of Johnny, detectives admitted that he had most likely been taken somewhere outside of the Des Moines area. Noreen told reporters she believed Johnny might have been abducted by members of the Way International, a religious cult. She elaborated that she checked herself and there were a number of cults known to abduct young people. She wouldn't say who she got her information from, however, and detectives said they didn't know of any cults that would kidnap a child who was unrelated to its members. On September 30th, 1982, Noreen told reporters that her life had been threatened because she went public with the fact that she thought Johnny had been abducted by the Way International. She claimed a man called her and stated, "Because of what you said on television, your life is in danger, young lady." She believed the anonymous caller was a cult member trying to scare her into giving up the search for her son. The following day, Noreen got a phone call from a male who said he was a member of the Way and that the group had Johnny. She was instructed to deliver $25,000 if she wanted her son back. She called police, who determined that the address she was given didn't exist. A few days later, investigators arrested 3 juveniles and charged them with harassment for making the ransom call, which had been nothing more than a cruel hoax. A month after Johnny went missing, detectives were still struggling to come up with any solid leads. Despite repeated public appeals, they hadn't been able to identify the driver of the blue sedan or the silver Fairmont. The investigation seemed to be hitting a brick wall. Although detectives continued to say that they had no evidence of foul play, they asked John and Noreen if they would be willing to take polygraph tests. The couple declined. John told reporters, "Basically, we thought it was pointing a finger at us, and we got nothing to hide." John made it clear that he thought police were focusing on family members because they couldn't come up with any real leads, saying, "I think they can do a heck of a lot better." John and Noreen's frustration with the lack of progress in the investigation was evident. They decided to take matters into their own hands and hired 2 private investigators to search for Johnny. The couple appeared on Good Morning America, which brought in calls from people across the country who thought they had seen Johnny. He was seen on a beach in California, hitchhiking in Iowa, and at a McDonald's in Maryland. Investigators were busy keeping up on the potential sightings, but were unable to confirm any of them. Still convinced that police weren't doing enough to find their son, John and Noreen recruited dozens of their friends to help them distribute missing person posters across the country. They sent more than 35,000 posters to police departments all over the United States, hoping that one would eventually reach someone who recognized Johnny. Although Noreen was convinced that her son was still alive, she admitted that a psychic had recently told her that Johnny was dead and would be found within 2 miles of his home. This psychic claimed that Johnny's body was laying face down near a creek close to an interstate highway. Noreen believed she recognized the area the psychic was describing and recruited 70 volunteers to help her search it. They didn't find anything. As 1982 came to a close, Noreen announced that private investigators had identified a man they believed was holding Johnny captive, but they refused to share this information with the police. According to John, private detectives questioned the suspect and he admitted taking Johnny. John and Noreen may have been frustrated with the police, but the police were just as frustrated with them. They cautioned them about continuing to release so much information to the media, noting it could jeopardize any future evidence to prosecute the person responsible for Johnny's disappearance. They also questioned why the couple would refuse to involve police after claiming someone confessed to abducting their son. In January 1983, police stated that they were aware of the person Noreen and John were convinced had abducted their son, but detectives were certain the man was not involved in the boy's disappearance, as they could prove he had been in Texas on the day Johnny vanished. Johnny's parents, however, remained convinced the man had their son. John and Noreen also believed that Johnny was still alive. They theorized that he was abducted by 2 men and forced into child prostitution and the pornography industry. Noreen stated, "It was slick and highly organized. I think they planned their abductions. Indicators point to that. We've done our homework. We know what goes on in other parts of the country." Shortly after midnight on February 22, 1984, Noreen received 3 brief phone calls from a boy who pleaded for her help before the line went dead. John was out of town on business at the time, but Noreen said she was absolutely certain that the voice on the other end of the line belonged to her missing son, though he sounded as if he had been drugged and was having trouble enunciating words. He claimed he was trying to make his way home, but didn't say where he was. The calls were too short for police to trace. Noreen said there had been at least a dozen sightings of Johnny. He was usually seen in the Southwest and was always accompanied by an unidentified male, presumably one of his captors. Witnesses claimed Johnny was now 6 feet tall and had long hair that hung down to his shoulders. He supposedly had slurred speech as if he was drugged and walked with a limp, which Noreen attributed to frequent beatings by his abductors. Despite the reported sightings, private investigators working for the family always found themselves several steps behind, never able to see Johnny for themselves. Still, John and Noreen were certain their son was still alive and were willing to do whatever they had to get him back. Sadly, John and Noreen were so open about their willingness to do anything necessary to find their son that it made them easy targets for scammers. In late July 1985, they said they were scaling back their public search efforts after being swindled out of $11,000 by a man who claimed Johnny was being offered for sale in Mexico City, Mexico. He claimed he could return Johnny to his parents for a fee. They gave the man the money he requested, but it soon became clear he didn't have Johnny. He was convicted of wire fraud and sentenced to 3 years in prison. In April 1991, psychic Greta Alexander once again offered her help in the investigation. She believed Johnny was dead and his body was buried in a shallow grave in a remote area northwest of Des Moines. With no other leads to follow, detectives spent hours following her directions to various places but didn't find any clues. John and Noreen remained convinced their son had been abducted as part of a child pornography ring, and in July 1991, an inmate in a Nebraska prison seemed to confirm their fears. Paul Bonacci, convicted of sexually abusing 3 minors, told a private investigator that he was one of 4 men who participated in Johnny's abduction. In an unrelated case, however, a Nebraska grand jury said that Bonacci was the most pathetic witness they had ever come across, noting he claimed to have 28 different personalities, and a psychiatrist testified that he was incapable of telling the truth. While authorities seemed to dismiss his claims, John and Noreen believed he was being truthful about what happened to their son. His lawyer also believed he was telling the truth, saying his account matched 100%. He never varied. He gave a description of Johnny's pants, names on a shirt, scars on his body. According to Bonacci, he last saw Johnny in 1989. The boy, who was initially sold to a pedophile in Colorado, was renamed Mark. He grew into a 6'4" man, and his hair was dyed black. He was then shipped to the Netherlands, where prostitution was legal. Bonacci couldn't explain why Johnny was still being kept once he was an adult if he had been targeted by a child pornography ring. Police interviewed Bonacci, but he was never charged in connection with Johnny's case. Although John and Noreen believed he was telling them the truth, detectives noted that the inmate claimed to have multiple personalities, and only one of them admitted to abducting Johnny. The other personalities denied any involvement. In February 1999, Noreen came forward with an astonishing story. She claimed that Johnny had visited her at her West Des Moines apartment in March of 1997, but she hadn't told anyone because Johnny said it would put their lives in danger. He supposedly showed up at her door at 2:30 a.m. accompanied by an unidentified man. They talked for an hour or so, and Johnny would look over to the other person for approval to speak. Police weren't sure what to make of this new claim. The district attorney told reporters that he would be very happy for Noreen if her son were truly alive, but noted Johnny would probably be safer if he went to the police rather than trying to hide. John said he was skeptical of her account of seeing Johnny. He accused her of simply making the whole thing up, pointing out that if Johnny really had returned to Des Moines, he would have gone to the home where he grew up, not Noreen's new apartment. Noreen said John was just jealous because their son had opted to visit her and not him. Detectives made several public appeals for Johnny to reach out to them, but were never able to prove he was still alive. The case faded from the headlines once again, but returned in August 2006 when Noreen received several photographs in the mail that she believed were of Johnny shortly after he was kidnapped. In one of the photographs, he was on a bed with 2 other young boys. All 3 of them were bound and gagged. Noreen immediately turned the photographs over to police, who were able to determine the boy in the picture was not Johnny. The photographs had been investigated by police in Florida in the late 1970s, and they were able to identify the boys and confirm that no foul play was involved. The boys claimed they were simply having a contest to see who could escape their bindings the quickest. Noreen was convinced she knew exactly what happened. He was kidnapped off the street for purposes of putting him into a pedophile ring. Even after 4 decades, she was still angry about the way the investigation was handled and didn't trust the police. She refused to provide a sample of her DNA for a national missing person database because she was suspicious of what the police would do with the information. John did not have the same feelings. He had no problem submitting his DNA and hoped it would eventually help identify his son. He admitted that he wasn't entirely sure what had happened to Johnny. He believed he had been kidnapped, but wasn't sure if his abduction had anything to do with child pornography. He just knew that he had been robbed of getting to see his only son grow up. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Johnny's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. And join me next week as I dive into another case.
Lowe's knows how to help make your home holiday ready for less. Get Select Style Selections vinyl flooring for just $1.99 per square foot and have it installed before the festivities begin. Our team can help you every step of the way. See a Lowe's Red Vest associate or visit Lowe's.com/holiday install to get started. Lowe's, we help, you save. Basic install only. Date restrictions apply. Subject to availability. Installed by independent contractors. See associate for details. Contiguous U.S. only. Lowe's knows how to help make your home holiday ready for less. Get select style selections vinyl flooring for just $1.99 per square foot and have it installed before the festivities begin. Our team can help you every step of the way. See a Lowe's Red Vest associate or visit Lowe's.com/holiday install to get started. Lowe's, we help, you save. Basic install only. Date restrictions apply. Subject to availability. Installed by independent contractors. See associate for details. Contiguous U.S. only.
Trying to lose weight? It's time to try Hers. At forhers.com/4u, you can access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss treatments tailored just for you. These include oral medication kits or compounded GLP-1 injections. Through Hers, pricing for oral medication kits start at just $69 a month for a 10-month plan when paid in full upfront. No hidden fees, no membership fees. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hers brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. Reach your weight loss goals with help through Hers. Get started at forhers.com/4u to access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss plans. That's forhers.com/4u, forhers.com/4u. Paid for by Hims and Hers Health. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions at forhers.com apply.